an update on transformation initiatives from Eric Moeller, Chief Transformation Officer. And Mr. Moeller, I see you here. I see the tall frame from the governor's basketball team. We're ready for you. So why don't you come on up and tell us what's going on with your office?
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
Appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about transformation and what we've been doing, what we're up to, and what we're planning to do as we go forward. Hopefully you've got a presentation there. I've got 6 slides, and we'll try to hold most of the time for questions. I don't know if you had a chance to read it yet or not, but I understand this is a Finance and Appropriations Committee, and so it's tempting to go in and talk about a bunch of line items and projects and dollars and cents for those things. But I think it's important in the case of this Office of Transformation that we back up a bit and make sure everybody really understands what we do, what the Transformation Office is all about, what we actually do, and how we work, because the money is really just part of it. It's a very important part, but it's only part. And so I want to take some time to explain how we work with and across agencies to get things done and make change happen that's good for everybody, we hope, and change that is sustainable and sticks long after the project itself is over, and what the keys to that are doing. I want to highlight a couple of the results that we've got so far from the past year's efforts, and then transition to what our planned next steps are, and of course answer your questions. If we look at page 2, this is trying to capture a whole lot of things that we do on one page. And so I think there are really 8 key things that we do as part of the Transformation Office. And all these things are combined and work together. Okay? The first one is what we offer uniquely to the agencies that we work with is transformation expertise. In-house people who have done this before. Personally, as I think we talked about last year, I've got a lot of experience, knowledge of how to do transformations in all kinds of organizations, big and small, national, global, local. And there is a science to transformation. Most folks who run any organization, an agency or business, hopefully they're quite good at doing that and running that day to day. But to actually change something, especially a significant change, is a skill set in and of itself that most executives, most leaders wouldn't have any reason to have experience with that. That is what I and the people that I work with bring to the party. When we do spend money, it is often going to go for third-party experts, resources, consultants, advisors of one kind or another, somebody with some real expertise to supplement what we have, something we don't necessarily know about or the agency doesn't know about. And so one of the questions that comes up is, well, why does the Transformation Office need to get involved? Why not just send that money straight to the agency? And I think we found it very important that we have somebody who knows how to work with those agents, those consultants, whoever they may be, to really get the best out of them, to really scope that work right, to hold them accountable. In my case, with actual consulting expertise, I know I've been on the other side of that, so I really know what these firms are and often are not capable of doing to make sure that we get really good work out of them, but then integrate that work into the overall process that we're doing. I think one of the things we found that's super important, both within agencies, whether you're talking about the DMV or VEC, or working across agencies in the case of procurement or many of the other things on the list, is getting folks to work together. I mean, we got a very siloed organization, like most businesses I ever worked with. Each agency kind of stands on its own. They're not really well set up to work across one another, or even the departments within them to work and collaborate with each other. So we're, as a kind of independent outside force, we can come together and help people convene that and problem solve things that really do span across multiple silos. Transformation itself requires a process. There's a proven process that we use, which I'm not going to elaborate on today, but it's a very structured approach. It's a way of breaking apart the work, the problem solving, the project management, all the stuff that goes into it. It's not just turning the keys over to some third party and saying, you guys go fix our problem, but how do we actually get, the bulk of this is actually people in the agencies doing the work with our leadership, supplemented by those third parties. We bring a whole series of tools. We have stage gates that we track initiatives through. We have an actual piece of software that we built called the Transformation Management System that we built in-house. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Louise.
Good morning. How you doing, Mr. Chairman?
Good, good.
Sorry. I had
No,
time
no,
on my
no
red
worries,
stuff.
no worries. I got our Chief Transformation Officer. And
Good morning,
I'm in the
Senator.
middle of mid-transformation myself, so keep going.
We do bring a level of accountability. So we set up a steering committee for each of the transformations we work on that usually I sit on. We have agency or secretary heads sitting on those as well to really hold teams accountable for driving the transformation forward at pace and in rigor. Lost my screen here. One of the things that's most important is individual accountability. You may have heard the governor talk about this. When we have a transformation, we'll have 50, 60, 80, 100 individual initiatives. Each of those is owned by an individual human being employee of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Joe Smith or Betty Jones will stand up and say, I'm Betty, and I own initiative number 32, which is here to go do thus and thus and thus. And having that individual ownership, it's not some team, it's not a department, it's not some amorphous thing, it's actually a human being who feels and owns that accountability for getting something done. We've got the structures and the process to set all that up. We bring a new level of aspiration, frankly, setting higher goals. The governor often talks about being best in class. We actually translate that into actual numbers. What are the metrics? Who is best in class? Who's the fastest? Who's the quickest? Who's the smartest at whatever it is, whether it's elsewhere in the Commonwealth or maybe it's in another state, and getting folks to shoot for a higher level of performance than maybe they had before. The governor talks a lot about using OKRs, objectives and key results, and that's something that we've instituted across literally every agency and every secretariat, not just within those things where we're using consultants. And the last thing is capability and skill building training. So it's not just go get some third party, have them do something to us, or have me or my team lead a project, but actually investing in the people in the Commonwealth and teaching them how to drive an initiative through, how to measure success, how to get things done on time. And they walk away not just with an initiative that was completed, but with actual skills and knowledge to do things better that hopefully they can use again and again. Okay, so that's a lot of words, but that's what we try to do in the Transformation Office. Just very briefly, some results of, does that work? In the first case, I want to talk about the Department of Motor Vehicles, which is one of the first things the governor asked us to look at. So we've created a large team of people. We have not used any third-party consultants in this. This has been me and my team spending an inordinate amount of time over at the DMV almost every day and have set up an entire process. I think that the headline here and the most easy way to understand this is we have over 50 initiatives, mostly focused on customer service as opposed to back office or IT or something else. That comes next. But we focus first on wait time. People are just waiting too long. So this is the data. Back in 2019, the average time people waited from the time they got to that check-in counter at the DMV until they got to the counter where the agent would help them was 37 minutes. Varies a lot across the state, varies day to day, but that's the average. That's real data. What's happened since January, well, late 2021, you can see this is the really end of 2021 data because they really didn't track the data very well.
I was going to say, we didn't even have walk-in for
You'll
about
see there's no
a year and
data
a
for
half.
20 here. There's no data on the chart because
Okay.
the DMV was closed. It was just flat out closed.
We reopened it, and I believe it was September of 21, and I remember that because it was my budget amendment.
And then it was appointment only. For a while.
But then we had walk-in at least by
then
2022.
Then the legislature required,
Right.
let's have some walk-in. And when we started in January, it was walk-in a couple of days, and it was
Right,
appointments the other
that's
days.
exactly
And that's the
right.
very first thing we did is we said, let's have walk-in and appointments every day.
Right.
Appointments turn out to be a good idea, but not only appointments because, not everybody, in fact, most people don't want to use an appointment. I'm not quite sure why, but they don't. So we give people what they want.
Most people are like me, are just unorganized. And lots of times going to the DMV is a spontaneous decision.
Well, and now it's a decision you can make. When you walk in spontaneous now, in December, our latest data, your average wait time was 12 minutes across the state.
That's good.
Okay. And we have lots of locations where the wait time is 0 or 2 minutes. Saturdays remain the toughest thing, but on average, it's 11 minutes, and if you get an appointment, it's 6 minutes. And we've driven that down relentlessly. Not just an initial. There was no one thing we did. It's the result of a complex process and capability building. And if you talk to the people at DMV now, I believe that you would find they actually think differently about how they serve customers, and that is, I think, a great success, and that should hopefully be lasting. I wanted to show you the monthly data, though, because when we take our eye off the ball, that's what happened in June and July. Not that we took it completely off the ball, but our office spent a little more time doing some other things. And
you probably had employees on vacation and things like that too. So.
No, it was just a lack of intensity, to be honest. And so we said, oh, that's no good. Let's get back in here and crack the whip a little bit. And it was not self-sustaining yet at that point. And it's still not, quite frankly. If we didn't have the focus, I believe that this would come right back up, because this isn't.
Yeah, go ahead. Senator Locke.
Does it include just the main offices or DMV selects or all of the offices?
Good question. You know what a DMV select is?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator, this is the 76 CSC locations. This is not including
This is
the
what
selects.
you are. This is not the selects.
This is not the
The
selects.
selects, by the way, is where the commissioner and treasurer run it out of their home office.
Yeah. So this is just a start. I'm not here to say we're done with the DMV. Like most of our projects, we got a first wave. We try to focus on something important to get early results, get people excited about it, but we have much more to do, which you can see on the right. Let me go quickly to the Employment Commission. Again, there's lots to do at the Employment Commission. Backlogs, as you've probably heard Secretary Slater say, and Secretary and I collaborate literally several times a day on this. First, let's get rid of the backlogs. Then let's transform the agency to perform at best-in-class levels. And then third, let's build a resiliency plan so the problems we saw never happen again. We haven't even started that third part. We're somewhere in the middle of the second part, almost done with the backlogs. This is just the backlog data. The red is the volume of claims or reports that we had to deal with on January 15th. The yellow is the additional volume that has come in over the course of the year. And the green is the volume of each of these four things that we have today, or last week, actually. You can see their separation reports are gone. There are none. Adjudication claims, there's only a few thousand. Potential fraud, again, a few thousand. And appeals is the remaining thing that we're talking about. It's about 96,000 appeals. But we've really gotten rid of half of them. So it's actually more than we had in January, slightly, but that's because we got a whole bunch of appeals that have come in. But again, this is the result of what we call war rooms. We've stand up the teams, adjudication team meets every single morning with charts and graphs and data, and what can we do today to move this along faster. And it's a level of intensity that only something like a transformation office could bring. Things on the right are the 5 work streams we got, each of which is led by a VEC employee. The overall transformation lead is also now a VEC employee. We did bring in some consultants to help us over the course of the summer. They were valuable and helpful, but only a small part of what's going on here. And so, we needed their help, but it's really about setting up our teams to be successful.
Let me ask you about that, because if you bring in consultants, we allocated, what, $5 million for you last year?
No, $10 million.
$10 million, okay. Is that where you paid the consultants from? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
so it's
right.
not one of these deals where if you save, then they get a percentage of the savings?
No.
Okay.
No,
All
it's
right.
straight up. It is. So I've got the funds you all provided, and when Commissioner Roth and Secretary Slater and I think it's going to be helpful to bring in some consultants, we've got the wherewithal to go do that. But we only do it if we think it's really going to help, right? So you'll see, and I've got a slide in here actually coming up that shows what we've actually spent so far and what we haven't. So this the transition from in 2022, our focus was not primarily on saving money. Now, I think as I've met some of you before, I love saving money. Let's give you guys more cash to figure out, better uses for it. We can all argue about what those uses are, but let's go get it. That is not what we've done. We've focused on customer service. We've focused on making government work better for people at the DMV, at the VEC, in the Partnership for Petersburg. The Behavioral Health Right Help Right Now program is, that's obviously Secretary Littell and his team a huge part of that, but we've been part of that too, and enabling that to happen. We've laid the groundwork for a whole bunch of future improvements of things I don't have, fancy charts to show you at. The OKR is getting everybody to measure what they're doing and what their outcomes are across every secretary and agency is something that we run out of the transformation office. The behavioral health assessment and building the transformation work plan that led to Right Help Right Now is a transformation initiative. That's why Governor calls it behavioral transformation. The procurement assessment, and Secretary McDermott and CPO O'Malley, we'll talk about that in a moment. We're working with economic development team with Jason Elkubi and Secretary Merrick on a new strategy and plan to really bring more focus and intensity to economic development. Workforce development, we've been part of that. And one of my favorites is working with Harold Clark on reentry of folks who come out of prison and or supervision and are still under supervision. Not only do we they've been working on trying to reduce recidivism, which I think Virginia is the second best in the country, but it's still 22, 23%. So we've created now what I think is the nation's first dashboard for tracking success of reentry. So it's not just recidivism or not, it's do you have the health care you need? Do you have the behavioral health services you need? Do you have a place to live? Do you have medical insurance? And do you have a job? And tracking.
That would be very helpful data.
We have this scorecard now, and so we're tracking these things. And again,
Are you getting that to the rehab committee so they know that?
We're still trying to get the data solidified in there because that data doesn't sit in any one place. Do you have a job? VDOC doesn't track do you have a job, or they haven't historically. VEC sort of does, and now our
Because I will tell you that, and everyone up here, we've done a lot of sentencing reform and things of that nature. And of course, the question is, if you release somebody, what happens to them?
Yep.
And to be able to have data that X percentage of folks have a job, X percentage of folks are, have health insurance, that they're basically back to being a productive member, that would be super helpful.
That is exactly what we have developed with Dr. Selly over at VDOC, and we're now turning that into a transformation, reentry optimization. So where those numbers are too low, what do we do about it, right? And what agency do we get mobilized? And again, that's obviously going to be very cross-functional. The initial data says something like 99.5% of the people do have a place to live. Housing doesn't appear to be the problem. Drug treatment, more of a problem. Jobs, it's not really clear yet, but it looks like some do, some don't. So we got to solidify those numbers, and then we got to go put action plans in place to make it better. Now we want to build on all that framework and all that groundwork, but our priorities in 2023 and 24 will be to continue that, but increase our focus on actually saving money. So you'll see things on our list like procurement, real estate optimization, and looking at the organization through the lens of talent and performance management. Do people have job descriptions? Do they have clear metrics by which they're held accountable? Do we actually hold them accountable? Do we offer training and development for those who are succeeding? Do we offer counseling and support and even consequences for those who are not? Do we have the right layers and the right size of the organization in the right places? And so I'll be working with Secretary on that as well. The last two pages, and I guess I'll stop here to take questions, is the first page, page 6. That's the $10 million that we were allotted last year. How we broke that down, we slightly revised the plan a little bit. Some numbers, where we could get it cheaper than we thought, we've lowered the number. Sometimes it could cost more. And then that's the amount that's transferred. The way it works is I transfer the money with the help of the Secretary of Finance to whatever agency is actually going to write the check to the third party. Okay, but again, these monies supplement the transformation process. You see all the results we got at the DMV. We set aside $500,000 for the DMV. We haven't spent anything for that yet. With all those other work streams, we likely still will. Maybe even in the next few months, but right now it has not been transferred.
So basically what you're saying here is we allocated $10 million to you, and you have actually expended 4.161
so far.
Okay.
We've committed. There's other, between the 4 and the 6, some of the stuff is committed.
Right,
so,
of course.
Right, and so most of that will be expended or at least committed by the end of the fiscal year, which is why we go to page 7. This is what we're asking for to build on what we think is this good work. We're asking for $15 million, and this is how we would break it out at this point. Some of this is continuing on the prior stuff. So if you see, procurement is on both pages. All right, there and Secretary McDermott will talk about the couple of phases that we have here.
Right.
Real estate, talent management. Those are the top 3 priorities, most of the money. Economic development, that's on the other list. This is some additional funds to help us drive that. Staffing support. We've also been asked by the governor and the chief of staff to look at small business and supplier diversity and put a transformation team on that to really assess, how well is it working?
Right.
Where are there opportunities to improve? And I mentioned the reentry, so we set aside some money for that. We're also deeply involved with Secretary Slater on workforce development. We've not put any money in here. The money to do that, he's got that separately.
Could you just expound a little bit on the third one, that state employee talent management?
Absolutely.
The question from Senator Lucas was talking about state employee talent management.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, that's all right. You need a microphone. You can use that one. We got it. Go ahead.
Yeah. If you go to page 11, Mr. Chairman, Senator, I've got a little bit more on that one, on each of these, in fact. There's a little bit of a short description.
Oh, but I called you to have the, I'm sorry,
It's in the
Mr. Chairman.
appendix.
All right.
Yeah.
In the appendix.
page 11
Okay.
provides a little more context for each of those line items. The third one down is state employee talent management, best-in-class process improvement. So as we've worked with agencies in our transformations and across other efforts, we've found, if you think about people management on a spectrum from hiring through even the recruiting and marketing process for our jobs to fill the many open positions we have, the recruiting, onboarding, training, development, evaluation, career advancement up until somebody retires. It's a whole process. There are issues with almost every step of that process. Okay, some agencies are focused on I can't fill the positions. I can't at the DMV where we have lots of open positions. They're continually hiring. The actual hiring process is so slow and cumbersome. While they finally finish the background checks and make an offer to an employee, the employee says, "I started another job 6 weeks ago. Like, what? I was real interested, but I'm sorry, I'm done."
Right.
And so that's got to be days, not months, that it currently takes. So that's an opportunity for transformation, just simply at the front end of the hiring process. But we have lots of folks who don't have a job description, or if they do have a job description, it's not functionally useful. It doesn't actually provide them guidance on what to do every day, and how do they know if they're doing a good job or a bad job? How does their boss know? We have a lack of training of supervisors. We have a lot of people who have been sort of battlefield promoted. No one ever taught them how to be a good supervisor. How do you hold people accountable? We have issues with attendance, especially the places I've looked at most, where people, sometimes they come to work, sometimes they call out sick.
You're not the only employer who's got that issue.
Hello?
I'm sorry.
But there are tools to manage it, right? And I think we have all the legal authority to do that necessary. It's just we just haven't put it in practice. We haven't taught people how to do it. It's just blocking and tackling I'm talking about.
Okay. All right, let's do this. You're basically coming before us. We allocated $10 million to you last year. You want another 15. I think you've done a good job kind of explaining what your office does. I've got some questions, but questions from the panel. Senator Locke, I know you got questions.
Give me a minute.
All right.
No,
Louise?
Mr. Chairman, my
Yeah.
question has been answered. I was mostly concerned about the employee talent management.
Let me ask a couple questions. I guess my very first one is procurement. And we've had a lot of fights and battles over procurement, and different governors, and I think you all are number 7 for me. Different governors have talked about consolidating procurement into one agency, keeping it separated between agencies. Do you all have a plan on procurement?
This would be a great opportunity to bring Secretary McDermott
All right.
and CPO O'Malley up to talk to that.
All right, and I'm not letting you off the hook because I got another question for you.
Okay.
Why don't we, let's hold that question, and then let me ask this question. We're talking about another $15 million to be allocated to your office, and I will say you've been responsive because when you came to see me a year ago, I asked you to take a look at DMV because I felt like we had a lot of room for improvement there. And obviously, VEC speaks for itself. We had so many issues during COVID. Yeah, that we all did.
Phone was ringing off the hook there.
Phone was ringing off the hook. If we allocated more money for you, where's that money going to go? Is it going to go to consultants? Is it going to go to? Are you hiring people within your office? I mean, where's the actual? Who's getting the checks?
Yep. It varies. Okay. But it is mostly third party consultants and the like.
Okay.
When we need to use that. So, with the exception, if I look at contracted staffing support for key initiatives, okay, that is contractors. Those are people that we bring in to work where we don't have people, but we're hiring individual people through a staffing agency or contracting agency. So, for example, we have project managers for the Partnership for Petersburg, working with the Secretary of Education and the Behavioral Health Project, where we have we have secretaries and we have agency heads, we have all the people in the agencies, but we really don't have people who know how to manage and track and drive initiatives through a project.
So you'll bring in a third party such as McKinsey? I mean, who are we talking about?
No, not this. This is, we're using a local agency called Impact Makers so far, where we will say, I talked to Joe Pugh, they have people. I said, I need project managers. They give me a list of resumes. We interview them and we hire Tim Lindsay or Paula Harris. So they're individual human beings. They could be employees, but we just don't have that talent. Now, frankly, I would rather over time In fact, we're trying to hire them directly because
Right.
it would be cheaper than hiring a contractor. But in the interest of moving quickly, we have that money there for that.
Yeah, Senator Lucas.
I do have a question.
Okay.
I noticed there seems to be a focus on Petersburg. Is that because they have issues that are peculiar to other localities?
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
Senator, Petersburg there are 46 initiatives that comprise the Partnership for Petersburg project. There's 4 in public safety and 6 in education. They're from all these different secretariats. Our focus on that is I sit on the steering committee for that project, and we have brought a project manager to bear on that to try to pull all this together, because what we found is they're great ideas and it's a great initiative overall, but to get these 46 things done requires somebody to play a coordinating and driving role for that. And that is not something that Secretary Gadara or Secretary Littell or any of the other good secretaries can do, because they've got 3 or 4 initiatives within that, but it's not anybody's first thing they think about every day. It gets too diffuse, and we don't want this to be just a series of nice press releases and events down in Petersburg. We actually want in those 46 initiatives to get done and change to happen for the people there.
So basically, Petersburg, which is a local government, you're almost treating it as you would a state agency that you're reinventing.
Well, no, it is very much a partnership. So some of those initiatives are actually owned by somebody in the city council or the mayor's office, and the people. If you look at all the people involved in those initiatives, they could be in the community college, they could be in the police department, they could be in the agencies here. It's teamwork. I don't know how else to describe it. It's a complicated mix. It's well organized, but it's getting whoever the right people involved are to pull the trigger and make something happen.
So you make recommendations to the city council.
We don't bring the ideas of what to do in Petersburg. That's not my office. My role is. Think about the transformation office. We're the guys who make sure that things get done.
Okay.
Somebody else's job is to figure out what are the things to do. Okay, so we defer to the experts, to the agencies who know this, to the city or the county government or whoever it is that's involved in each individual initiative. But we're setting up the structure and the processes, all those things on my first page, to make sure that all that good work actually moves through, gets well validated, gets well planned, gets well measured, and actually happens.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I got to think through that.
Senator Lucas.
I got to think through that a bit, Mr. Chairman, because it sounds like what you've indicated earlier, it sounds like Petersburg is being treated like a state agency.
Right.
So I know you said it's complicated, so it's a little bit difficult to kind of just place
Yeah,
it.
Petersburg, not my jurisdiction, but it's an independent city, so y'all can make recommendations. Senator Locke.
I'm confused as to why an additional $15 million is needed if the current $10 million hasn't been spent, first and foremost. What's unallocated projects?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Senator, most of the 10 will be spent by the end of the fiscal year. The unallocated projects we just didn't know what they were going to be yet. It was the rounding error. And so we tried to be as precise as we can in that, and we had 10 million, and we weren't sure what we were going to use that with. At any given one of these, we may need to go a little bit over or a little bit under, and so we just put the balance in that unallocated until we have the exact project.
Okay. All right, we need to move along. Thank you. Appreciate
You're
your coming here. That was a good presentation, and I think I had asked about procurement, and we have Secretary McDermott from the administration who's going to introduce Mike O'Malley. Please come forward, Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senators. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you. I would like to introduce Mike O'Malley. We hired him about 3 weeks ago as a Chief Procurement Officer, Deputy Secretary, reporting to me.
Welcome aboard, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Brand new, I thought I would give you an update of where
Sure.
we are so far, Mr.
Okay.
Chair, and then I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, why don't you tell us what you're up to?
Okay, so when I first came, we each received a transition document of things we should look at, and procurement was on that list. So I began to really dig into procurement across the state. We formed a small team of internal folks, employees, procurement professionals, and developed a kind of a scope of work that was led by the Deputy Secretary of Transformation, and looked at the processes that we currently use, the approach that we take. And what we found out is that there are lots of opportunities within procurement to improve the processes. We identified that there's no central repository for contracts. We have multiple systems that track contracts. It's very difficult to get a real assessment of who we actually buy from collectively. Many agencies renew contracts automatically as opposed to rebid them, which we think is probably not a best practice. And we looked at no real opportunity for consolidation across agencies. The same vendor will go to multiple agencies and sell the same product at different prices and terms. So with that, we made a decision to work with the Transformation Office and hire a consultant. We went out, we call it phase one, we went out for bids, we went to 11 different firms, and Boston Consulting Group came in and actually won the bid and conducted a deeper dive into our processes and the way that we do procurement. They interviewed over 45 people within agencies, including higher ed. They collected data and developed a spend analytic model. So they have, most of these consulting firms have significant amount of data on products and services across various entities. So they compared some of our prices to what other states are paying, compared some of our, the way we actually approach procurement, and came back with some recommendations, pretty much validating what the initial team found out as to ways that we can improve procurement. So they also identified potential savings as a result of our a new approach. So we decided to go forward with phase two. The phase two proposal from BCG was exactly, Mr. Chair, what you recommended, that they would receive part of the savings. We met with Senator Howell, we met with some of her staff, and it really was not the right approach. So we decided to go forward with hiring our own Chief Procurement Officer to lead this project. We will use a consultant, perhaps Boston Consulting Group, to do a small amount, maybe 3 months worth of work, working with Deputy Secretary O'Malley to really drill down into the data. But we'll go forward, and we've already formed our own internal team to go forward with phase two. Phase two will look at 2 specific products and services: technology services and professional services. Professional services include consultants. We hire a lot of consultants, but also will include staff aug. So there are where we hire a contractor, a specific person. I think Chief Miller described it. It's staff augmentation.
Oh, staff augmentation. Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
We have thousands of contractors working across state government.
Okay.
So they will look at the way that we actually hire those contractors, and what do we use them for, and can we do better at that. A key part of the expectations of phase two is, again, as Chief Miller mentioned, small business. I have heard from numerous small businesses that it's difficult to work with the state, that it takes a long time to be certified.
Yep.
We have to improve that process. We really want to do more business with small business, and would.
A question, Senator Lucas.
I
Yes,
don't want
Senator.
to slow down your flow, but I'm curious, back up, rewind a bit. When you said that you managed to come up with a process to collect the data so that you know who you're contracting with,
Yes, ma'am.
and that must be something that's fairly recent, because otherwise we wouldn't be getting the kind of calls that we get from people who are saying that the process is so slow, they never have an opportunity to get a contract.
It's very recent.
Yes,
And we're just starting to collect that data. We don't even have the comprehensive data. When we went out to look for what we spend with vendors, we had to go to the Department of Accounts to get the invoices that had been paid,
Right.
not the contract amounts or the purchase orders that had been let. So it's very difficult. We have 17 different systems to manage procurement across state government.
17 different
17.
systems.
Yes.
Okay. So to take the question I asked Eric and give it to you, do you all plan to consolidate procurement in one agency? Are the
We
agencies going
have
to do their own
no
procurement?
definitive plans. Each
Okay, how about
agency now
independent
does their
plans?
own. Well, what we brought in Deputy Secretary O'Malley to do is look and to see if that is the proper recommendation.
All right, okay, I'm going to ask you some questions in the meantime.
That's
All right.
fine. So we want to use these two major categories of spend, technology services and professional services, to really come up with what is the best approach. To see if a consolidated agency, many states have that. Many states have chief procurement officers who do the buying across state government. We don't. Every agency buys their own. So we really want to do it right and make sure that we have the right analytics associated with that.
Okay.
So this is what we're planning to accomplish in Phase 2. We really want to look for opportunities to consolidate. We want to ensure that contracts are rebid, appropriately rebid, so that more vendors have the opportunity to do business with us. We want to digitize our contracts. We want to get into the 21st century when it comes to systems. It's very important, and I think that Deputy Secretary O'Malley can reaffirm this, that we have a procure-to-pay process so that we make sure that we're paying for what we actually bought. Four-way match, so that you match the contract with the purchase order, with the receipt of the services, with the invoice. And we don't have that procure-to-pay process across the state. So we put together a small team. We will probably hire someone to come in and help us with that on a very small scale, much less large than we initially anticipated. And we're ready to move forward now. There's additional things that we will look at in Phase 3. Subscriptions, office equipment, contingent labor, construction contracts. So we plan to, once Phase 2 is through, really expand it into more of those commodities and services.
Okay.
So with that,
All right, why don't, Mr. O'Malley, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what your plans are?
Sure. Well, thanks very much, Mr. Chairman and Senators. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a tremendous opportunity for me, given my background in transformation. Hopefully everybody can hear me.
Yep.
I've spent the better part of 20 years in the corporate sector. I've worked at Verizon for 18 years, where I ran strategic sourcing. Did a major transformation initiative there, and also at AIG, ran what was called AIG 2.0, which was a transformation initiative there. Tremendous success in both areas, applying the systems, tools, the processes that the Secretary McDermott just laid out, and I see the principles that we applied there being applied here to great success.
Okay. Well, I just sort of, and I'm going to echo what Senator Lucas said. I have clients, and I've certainly had constituents that want to bid on state contracts. Sometimes it can be a maze. It's very confusing. Each agency is different. And what I would like to see is just something that's open and obvious, and you know, when people bid on contracts, to the extent that it's applicable, the public is aware of what's going on. But mostly it's just, you know, we live in an age of a digital age where if you have a contract posted, it ought to be on the internet. It ought to be people that are vendors in that,
yes,
you know,
sir.
they ought to be aware of it.
Mr.
So.
Chair, we agree.
Okay, any questions for Madam Secretary or Mr. O'Malley? Hello, Jill.
Good morning.
All right.
Morning, Senator.
Good morning. I would just, if I may, Mr. Chair, say I had some conversations with the Secretary as the transition was happening, and I'm aware of what it is they're attempting to do. And I would just say I don't think people appreciate how far behind we are and what a heavy lift this is going to be. And I think as we're trying to consolidate services across government, and particularly where we are with procurement, the savings that we have the opportunity to capture will be probably, it will be transformative. And the economies of scale that we can capture across government will be transformative. But the most transformative will be, I think, what the private sector, the access the private sector will have to bid and to engage with government. Because I think we have all had, as our constituents engage with us, conversations about the barriers to entry. you cannot get in. You absolutely cannot get in. There are people who are in, and they are in, and that's it. And so I just would say for all of us who have the opportunity to help you, we are all here and eager to help. And so I would just say, please ask us, and you know, whatever it is that we as the legislature can do as you're going through this process, we are eager to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Great. Well, I appreciate your coming to visit us, and we will follow up as necessary. And Mr. O'Malley, good luck. Where are you moving here from?
From Long Island, New York.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome to Virginia. Jets or Giants?
Jets.
Jets. Okay. Well, you need a new quarterback, but okay. Okay. Good luck. All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Next, third item on the agenda, we're going to talk about an overview of Senate Bill 800, which is the governor's proposals. And staff, you got about 15 minutes. I'm sure you can do that. Why don't you just run us through what the governor's proposing?
All right. Thank you, Senator. Okay. So you'll all be familiar with this first slide that just gives a quick overview of what's happening in general government overall. So I'll run through this just very quickly. Net increase of $947.6 million, of which $905 million is in general funds. And some of the highlights we're going to go through here. If we look over onto the next slide, we start going into a lot of the employment compensation proposals that are included. Starting at the top, you'll see the one-time merit bonus for full-time state employees budgeted at $100 million. Now, this is one of the contingent components that you saw in the broader presentation that we did last week, where this would be contingent upon tax
This is
revenue.
the accordion?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Right, and I believe this was prioritized number 4 out of 5, but I can go back and double check on that,
Okay.
on that list. And so the idea would be that it would be a bonus of up to 10% of base salary.
Who makes the decision about who gets that bonus?
That's based on agency employees receiving a rating on their annual review of, I think, extraordinary contributor is the label.
Okay, and that's what, 10% or what?
It would be a 10% salary bonus.
What
one time.
percentage of employees get that?
We don't have data on that.
Oh, well, we better have data on that or else,
Somebody in trouble.
so, yeah, I mean, I don't know how we're supposed to allocate that.
As it was explained to us, should the number of recipients and the value of the bonuses exceed the $100 million at 10%, the value of the bonuses would then go down.
Let me just put it this way, and I'm from an older generation where there was a difference in grading, and, you know, I've been to high school graduations where they ask everyone with a 4.0 to stand up and half the class stands up. So, I mean, you know, I'm just saying that, okay, it's a different, you know, so I see merit bonus and I'm like, great, but I need to know kind of what percentage of our employees get, how you determine it. Thank you. Yeah.
It's a question worth raising.
All right. It's been raised. Keep going.
Okay.
Thanks.
So then moving on, at $99.8 million, there's a flat rate bonus of $1,500 for all full-time state employees. This is based on the same model that the $1,000 bonuses from last year used. We have merit bonuses again, but within the Department of Education for instructional staff at $50 million.
Okay.
The bonuses would be up to $5,000.
Okay.
We have instructional staff and support staff retention bonuses within the Department of Education at $45.2 million. And then finally, for schools and positions that are identified by DOE as hard to staff, we have $10 million for additional.
So basically, we have
recruitment
$305
retention
million
bonuses.
set aside for employee additional comp.
One-time bonuses,
Just
specifically.
bonuses. All right. That's something we're going to have to talk about. Seriously talk about. Yep.
One-time bonuses.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
If we move on to the next slide, we look more at long-term targeted salary and compensation increases. And I don't know, Katie, do you mind if I go through it, or would you like to?
Yeah, I can do the next slide.
Okay, sure. Okay. So we have the bulk of that, as you'll see at the top, going through the compensation board to deputy sheriffs and regional jail officers to address salary compression. A lot of this is addressing positions that weren't addressed in Chapter 2, because you'll remember that we did a lot of adjustments to salaries and compressions last year as well. You'll see this among behavioral health, food service, and housekeeping staff. It's within 3 different agencies that fall under Health and Human Services, but specifically it's positions that are tied to behavioral health. But again, food services and housekeeping in particular. Under Department of Corrections, again here, this is addressing positions that didn't get it last year. It's salary increases for corrections and parole and probation officers, as well as security staff. Under the Indigent Defense Commission, we have salary compression adjustments for public defenders, sworn positions under state police. Similarly, for law enforcement officers within the Marine Resources Commission and under Conservation and Recreation, we're addressing issues there. There are salary increases to meet with private market demand under the Chief Medical Examiner's Office. For the Virginia School for the Deaf and Blind, under the DOE salary increases that were budgeted last year, because the School for the Deaf and Blind is budgeted as a separate agency. They didn't get salary increases, so this is making up for that here. Under the Office of the Attorney General, there were salary increases last year, but only for the attorneys, and so this is including salary increases for the non-attorney staff. We're also seeing salary increases under the Virginia Criminal Sentencing Commission, and again, sworn positions under Wildlife Resources.
Okay.
Okay. So now we're breaking out under the different secretariats the amendments included in SB 800.
Okay, what page are you on? 4?
We're on page 5 now.
5, okay.
Okay.
That's executive offices.
Yes.
Okay.
So going into executive offices, for the lieutenant governor, you'll see a repeat of the request for 2 support positions.
Okay, wait. I see 500,000 for security services. Can someone give me some background on that? Why is Capitol Police not sufficient?
The lieutenant governor is seeking additional security that would not be working directly with Capitol Police or Virginia State Police. They would be contract services.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Lucas.
Yes, I raised that question last week when the request was made for $500,000 for 2 additional security staff.
Yeah, I guess, look, you know, other than the governor, does anyone get security in the state government?
Not through the EPU.
I'll say not Supreme Court justices, not,
No.
do you? I don't. I don't either. All right.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think what happens is if there are like threats against a member,
Okay,
the
so I-
Capitol Police would step up.
Right. So I guess I need to know, is there something we're not aware of that would, because we want everyone to be safe. Is there something we're not aware of that we need to be made aware of? And if you need to contact us ex parte, that's fine too. But I've never seen a state officer just get a private security contract. I just haven't seen it. Like, I've only been here 22 years, so.
Made me buy a new car.
All right.
Made me get out of my house.
Okay. All right, let's keep pushing.
Okay. So under the Office of the Attorney General, we talked about the salary increases for non-attorney staff. The main item here that you'll see is funding for a new witness protection program. This is a component of the governor's Bold Blue Line initiative. And the idea is that this would be a grant program that would go to state and local law enforcement agencies to provide temporary witness protection funding of up to $2,500 a month for witnesses and or immediate family members.
I know I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Senator Locke.
One of the local Commonwealth's attorneys did mention something about this, about not being able to protect their witnesses.
Okay.
So,
Which line item is that? A witness protection, okay.
Witness protection.
Bold blue
we
line,
had the same
okay.
issue in Portsmouth. Yeah, that was the Portsmouth.
Okay.
Okay. Then you'll see the addition of a variety of positions under the, let's see, Cannabis Consumer Protection, Investigative Staff, Organized Retail Crime Task Force, implementation of legislation that's been submitted around hemp regulation, and then 2 positions for ratepayer advocacy, specifically looking at utility usage.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
And then there's language to set up a fund for the Commonwealth's opioid settlements.
Right.
If we move on to the next page,
Yep.
going into judicial, I'm going to pass it over to Katie briefly.
Yeah, so just quickly, so just went over the Indigent Defense Commission. This would take their entry-level salary from $58,000 to $70,000. For the Supreme Court funding for specialty dockets, so right now, there's about $5 million general funds going to specialty dockets throughout Virginia, but not all specialty dockets get state funding. So this would have a treatment coordinator and fund that, and the remaining 50 or so dockets that don't currently have a treatment coordinator that's state funded, as well as 12 planned. So this is for, again, the treatment coordinator. Increasing the retired judge per diem, this would take it from $250 to $400 a day. As you all remember, last year the Senate budget took it to $350. We also did $350 for substitute judges, but that was removed in conference. So this is a little bit higher than what was provided last year in the Senate budget. Just quickly, Supreme Court Human Resources and Fiscal Staff, this is a need they expressed. We gave them a couple positions recently, and the need is still there. Reverting the criminal fund balances, this just deals with kind of the recent decrease in court activity and court backlog, so there's been less fund payouts from the criminal fund. So just an overestimation there, so that goes back to the general fund. Court of Appeals staffing to address caseload relates to the appeal of right changes that were made recently. Right. And then Jess mentioned the Criminal Sentencing Commission. Moving on to slide 7. So on the sworn sheriff's deputies, you'll remember last year we took their entry-level salary up to $42,000, but we didn't address the supervisory salary, so this would take them up based on rank and grade. It's about 2 to 11% for each of those. This next item, pilot program for court order transportation. This is part of the governor's behavioral health package. This is kind of a partner to something at the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. That one does off-duty officers and provides an incentive for sheriff's offices and police offices to get off-duty officers to come help with TDO and ECO transport. This would actually give them additional positions based on their ECO, TDO workload, kind of similar to how we currently fund positions through the comp board. So it would just be additional positions, same way we fund them, but based on their TDO, ECO workload. Moving on to salary increase.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead, Senator Lucas.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
are they going to be full-time employees?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Lucas, so it'll be about 71 deputy sheriffs that are full-time positions, and then the remaining would go to, like, if I don't qualify for a full-time based on my workload, I would get a part-time or an hourly reimbursement. So it'd be 71 plus the part-time. They would need to get some data from the magistrates to kind of understand exactly how that would be allocated
That's
across.
the 13.9 million.
Right.
This is the pilot program, the 4.1.
Pilot program, okay, all right, 4.1, all right,
Okay, thank you.
all right.
Moving on to salary increases to reflect population increases, and then the next one, based on career development, this is something that it looks like historically has been adjusted in accordance with law, to account for local population increases and also people who have completed career development certifications.
Okay.
I'll skip the next one because it's technical unless you all are curious about it. And then I think I can hand it back over to Jess for slide 8.
Well, all right. So now we'll just quickly run through the administration secretariat. We've got 2 items under DGS. Specifically, we're adding 2 positions for tuberculosis testing, as tuberculosis rates have increased. The update to the Capitol Square master site plan, that is another item that is bringing in consultants, but it's looking at the plan that hasn't been updated since 2011. And again, that's looking at construction in the immediate vicinity of Capitol Square, so including the General Assembly building, et cetera. But there's a language component that requires consideration of impact on local businesses and residents, as well as consideration of any possibilities for public-private partnerships. So then looking quickly at DHRM, there's $500,000 over the biennium that's accounting for a reduction in the number of clients who have been using the agency's shared services center. So this is a temporary amount of money, and I believe we're going to look at language to ensure that that's temporary. We've been told that the agency is looking at long-term plans.
Okay, all right.
to accommodate for that. So looking over at VITA, this is just, quickly going through. There's a $31.9 million reduction in non-general funds, just
That's
based.
how they charge the agencies, right?
Exactly.
All right.
So that's based on anticipated need for 2024.
All right, that's kind of between you all. Mm-hmm. All right.
Okay, I can skip over the rest of
Skip that.
Yeah, okay. Looking under finance, the Department of Accounts, realigning support for statewide single vendor databases. That's adding 12 positions at $1.1 million. That's non-general funds. Under general funds, they're looking to expand the quality assurance unit by 5 positions. The agency had requested 10, but this is what was included in the introduced budget. If we go down to account transfer payments, we've got the mandatory revenue stabilization fund deposit of $406 million. That was from Chapter 1, and then the one-time deposit to VRS from Chapter 2 that was contingent on tax revenues from the last year. And then, of course, there's language to advance $496 million from the reservation deposit fund to the revenue reserve fund. Moving on to DPB, this is just transferring within the agency. They need more analysts. And then there's language authorizing a working capital advance of up to $3 million to replace the current regulatory town hall website. Looking over at Department of Tax, just small items there. If we move on to Department of Treasury, there's an additional $500,000 the first year to support the agency in sending out and processing the taxpayer relief checks from last year. And then otherwise, Treasury Board, adjusting the debt service appropriation in the first and the second year. And then on the second item, you'll see one-time savings from the bond defeasances from last year.
All righty.
Going over to central appropriations, we talked about the merit bonuses, the flat rate bonuses. There's the $15 million that the Chief Transformation Officer just told us about, proposed for next year. We have reimbursement of costs associated with the presidential primary. We have funding for statewide network transformation of $5.2 million. The system that's in place right now is at least 20 years old, which can explain some of the technology issues that we have had. So they're upgrading that statewide. You'll see $5 million here for VTOP. Typically, that would be found under Chev's budget, but you'll remember last year there was a broader workforce development package that was included in central appropriations that had the additional money for VTOP within it. And so the money has been included within that broader pot. Once we have funding for LOTA premiums, there's $1 million to reimburse for fines that were paid in response to COVID-19 violations. There's funding for agency rental cost increases. That's based on the amount of space being rented, not on actual rental rates going up.
Right.
There's $500,000 to develop a plan for the relocation of the Washington Commanders. That may sound familiar as we did that last year. Moving on to the next slide. You'll just see there's a reversion of a total of $6.6 million of surplus general fund balances, health insurance premiums, workers' comp, changes in IT costs. You'll see the one-time savings in higher education interest earnings, and then down under NGF, the credit card rebates. Our understanding is that this was not necessarily paid out on the schedule that we were anticipating. So we have questions about whether those funds should really be taken back, as well as with the alignment of tech talent appropriations with the current MOUs, just based on the agreements that we had more broadly with Amazon.
Okay, any questions? We got to wrap up here. All right.
Okay.
Is that everything?
We can quickly go over independent agencies. There's $10 million to implement costs around state health benefits.
And non-general.
Non-general, that's right.
And then the same thing with the casinos.
Exactly.
Okay.
and then just reverting general fund balances under the Workers' Compensation Commission.
Okay. All right, well, there's a lot here, and obviously we're going to have a chance to sort of digest it and make decisions. I think probably the biggest decision we're going to make is about employee compensation. You all have $300 million set aside as bonuses, which, you know, I'm not a huge fan of bonuses. I understand it, but I think we also need to see where we stand in terms of competitiveness for state salaries. Another thing is, you know, a couple of years ago, I asked our staff to look into if we didn't have people coming to work, if they were working remotely, whether or not we still needed all of the space we were leasing and or owning. And I'd like to know kind of where we stand on that. But I think the most important thing is, as we look at our state employee workforce, I'm of the opinion, and I think the statistics are bearing this out, fewer people are working, which means you have to pay a higher price for labor, which means you can expect more too, because you're going to have better skilled, more motivated workers out there. But I think you got to pay a competitive wage to get a competitive employee. So that's the Peterson theory on labor markets.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. And you'll see.
Senator Lucas,
I have one last concern.
please go ahead.
I know last year we put in money for treasurers who had acquired new skills.
Yep.
And they had not been compensated, and I understand that. Did your treasurer show up this year as not having been compensated?
Yeah, somehow that fell out of the budget.
Yeah, what happened?
I can look into that more
Yeah,
specifically
I got a visit
but I
from
noted your
treasurers
budget
who-
amendment.
We need to do right by them. I know Louise has that amendment.
Mhm. And next week, we'll go over budget amendments that'll speak to some of the items, including that one.
Can't wait.
And I think we have additional treasurers who just popped in too. You have one?
Yeah, my treasurer texted.
My treasurer's here.
Yeah.
Mine's here.
They said
I've known him for a long time, too. Yeah.
they're complaining because they said the commissioners of the revenue.
Got it.
All right. All right. Okay, listen, that was a good meeting. 8:37, we're going to adjourn.
All right.
Out.
Good job.
And you know what? I tried to get the governor to put that in, and he didn't.
For the
we
treasurers?